I think the intro to 3 Body Problem should be required in schools for children to watch. Have you guys seen it?
No.
There should be education on all totalitarianism, so communism as well as Nazism. It's you get a decent understanding of how bad Nazism is. You don't get any understanding of how bad communism is, and communism is arguably as bad as or worse than Nazism because of the number, just the sheer numbers.
All right, let's. It's hard to frame it properly. I'll only show like a quick couple seconds just because.
I thought it was colorized footage of.
No, this is the show 3 Body Problem. So they have a physics professor in a dunce cap on stage while they're all screaming, and they tell him to reject science. What she's saying right now, she's also a physics professor.
That's his wife.
And she's unharmed, and she says, the youth of the revolution have showed me the way. I was completely wrong about everything. Certainly, you will renounce your incorrect views. And then they end up just beating him to death.
He's like, physics are real. That's just the way it is.
And they say like and you claim that there is a God or something, and he's like, there's no evidence one way or the other, and they just start beating him to death. Yeah.
And the thing is that, so that is emblematic of things that actually happen in China. You can hear stories about Tofan Lysenko and medical and Lysenkoism in the Soviet Union, which is essentially, he was like, hey, this is how plants like it. It's literally the Brondo story. Okay. It's where it came from. They were like, he's like, look, plants are communist. All of that Darwinism stuff, that's all Western, and that's all just bullcrap. Plants are communist. So if you plant plants that are like each other, close to each other, they will flourish because they will actually help each other, which is absolute horse crap. And it caused a massive famine and killed millions and millions of people. And this is something that happens in communist countries all the time. It is counter enlightenment. It rejects reality. It rejects the fact that we can know reality close enough so that way we can predict outcomes. And you see it today when it comes to people talking about the ability to change genders. And, with Blaire here, it's like, Blaire is a trans woman, but Blaire is under no illusions as to if she becomes a biological woman. She's not.
There's no point to divorce those two things. You know what I mean? And that's the difference.
Yeah, and you end up hurting people when you tell them that actual science and biological facts, reality, like plants don't need to be planted on top of each other because they compete for resources in the soil. Like that kind of stuff spreads through your society and it kills people.
Remember? And it trickles out to so many different things, unhoused, not homeless. And then you're suddenly denying the ways to actually help people.
Like some of my favorite is pig iron.
Yeah.
So they melted down all the tools. What is it, for weapons or something? Is that they're trying to make?
I believe.
It was just to make like kilns. It was like to jumpstart China into a like industrial power. So all they did was make a whole bunch of crappy metal, and
that didn't
really
work.
Help anybody.
And then because this is the fascinating thing about someone who's really dumb, who doesn't understand surface level thinking. It's like, hey, we need an industrial revolution. That'll make us wealthy. I know. Let's take all the tools we have and turn that into industry. And then they made garbage that didn't work, and then they all starved. And then they went and killed all the sparrows. Remember that?
Yeah. I was gonna say they doubled down after everything. All the crops were failing, and they're like, oh well, the crops are failing, and like
because
the sparrows, right? Yeah.
So you got to kill, and then the locusts came.
Yeah. And then there's so many locusts and no sparrows, dude. It's unreal.
You guys are 100% right, and these are things that people don't know about communism. It is not an enlightenment philosophy. It rejects the idea that we can know reality closely enough that we can predict the future. Dude. And it says that romanticism is a better way to do it. That was all Rousseau's stuff, that we need to be animals first and civilized second. So we need to be animals in cities, and we need to embrace that as opposed to reason, because reason is fallible and reason can be mistaken, and we can make errors in reason. So the most real thing that human beings can experience is our emotions. So we should follow those, and that's how you get, I want society to be perfect.
Let's make a sci-fi short film where it starts with some people hiding in an attic, and then like the finale of it is dudes in like white unitards with weird sci-fi looking guns break in, and the people are like screaming. Then like the dad gets up and he has like a stick and he's like, get back. And then they grab him and they jab the gun into the side of his temple and click it. And it goes, and then when they pull it out, there's a Neuralink in his head and he goes, and then he turns around to his family and then he goes and he grabs their kids and then they all stick him with the chips. And then they all turn and go, we're sorry about that. And they all walk downstairs.
That's a good intro to like a series.
Yeah.
Like that's the cold intro, 3 minutes or something. That'd be badass.
You got people like hiding underground, and the people who are in the Hive Neuralink are trying to find resistors and chip them.
There's part of me thinks that in the future there are going to be people that are transhuman and not transhuman, and there's going to be transhumans that are specifically take it upon themselves to defend the non-transhumans, so that way there are actual human beings that are allowed to be purely human beings. Like they're going to be a religious group of people that are like, we don't want any of this transhumanism, and it's going to take transhumans that have augmented abilities to protect the pure humans from other transhumans.
Think about where this goes.
Like real sci-fi shit.
We're not that far off.
100 years from now,
it's like Marvel Comics.
100 years from now, the average human they've got personal biofields that protect them from harm. They're immortal. They wear sleek unitards and they can float through the air. And then there are Amish type Mennonites who don't want to become. And then funny thing is, probably it's like traditional conservatives today. Like, we do not want to become whatever you are. And so they're basically in zoos. They're effectively in reserves,
like
where
farms,
they can,
giant enclosed farms.
And then
they just grow the food.
And the transhumans are all mentally linked, and they're just like, they grow food and the food is used, so we have they have no consequence to us. And there's weird people floating around and their eyes are glowing and weird crazy nonsense.
And people don't realize how close, if it's possible, right? So there's always the question of this, if it's possible to do this. It may be, it may not be. But if it is possible to write experiences into the brain, right? Because that's essentially what Neuralink is the goal, is to be able to put ideas and experiences into the brain without actually having to do it. That's the purest virtual reality.
The dude abides super chat. The F in communism stands for food.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
True. I think because we were talking about communism and how the forced, equalization of the farming industry. They're like, if we melt down all the iron, we'll do this. But it had, implications that they had foreseen. CRISPR, I'm looking at right now, coming out of China, big time CRISPR, it's gene editing. They don't know the implications of this. They're like, every human is the same. If we do equal this, all else. And it's like, yo, bro, you're experimenting with the human genome. You might have you could turn people feral. You could do lots of different unintended consequences, not least of all death to 99% of the people doing it. But like that on top of like mRNA therapy, which is also genetic therapy, like, do they understand the implications of foisting this on the species as a whole? I don't think they do.
Well, we see that in so many different ways, right? Like the vaccine was an example of that. It's like one size fits all. It's going to work for every single person. No argument against it. You're not allowed to say, well, I have this, or maybe I don't want it. It's like one size fits all, which is really the outcome of that.
The communist.
What's fascinating is how it's like, what year? I don't know what year it's 1989 they introduced the Borg. I think it was the first season of Next Generation the Borg was introduced. It's 89.
That was
good. So the general premise behind the Borg is that a species of human-like people started creating medical technology, and then they started integrating themselves, and then eventually they Neuralinked themselves and became a hive mind. I'm not a big fan of where they took it, where there's a queen who controls all of it. It was much better when it was just a hive of all the thought of all of the beings, and so there was no individual.
Yeah, just like an AI computer would have been cool.
But it is fascinating how even before the advent of these technologies, we could like the boomers who were making that show could see where this would go.
They need more Borg dogs, though. They don't have enough non-human Borgs. They'd have cats Borged up with them. They'd have all their pets.
No, technically in Star Trek, there's a whole bunch of different species that are Borg.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, because they capture anyone and they assimilate you into your technology and your culture will be assimilated. Resistance is futile, and there's no reason. And the fascinating thing is when the crew, like when they board the Borg vessel, they're ignored completely, and it's because like when you get like a bacteria in your system, like you get an infection, it is ignored until there's an immune response. So their idea was like, if humans from the Federation go into the Borg ship, the Borg just like, they're completely not a thing to us until they become a threat. Then they react to the, you're right, like an infection almost. I think there's a strong possibility with Neuralink. This is where we end up, because the way it will start is you already have that dude who tweeted out through Neuralink. Yep. And I'm excited for the guy. This is the challenge. You know, here's a guy who I believe he's
quadriplegic.
He's quadriplegic.
This is the dude that played Civ.
He can play Civ. I mean, that sounds amazing. A lot of people are probably happy to have some freedom back in their lives. But what happens then is when we advance to read-write capabilities, even if we get to the point where it's just a read, no write, meaning it can detect input from your brain and put it on a screen, meaning you'll be sitting in a room with like the doors closed, the windows closed, looking at a screen, and you're sending information out and you're just using your mind and it's happening super fast. You're absorbing information through your eyes with the screen, but you're sending information with your brain, so it's still rapidly speeding up the process. Once we get to that point where it can write to your brain, and in your mind you can see the responses for people, the exchange of information will be so rapid that it will be like the Borg. You will be walking in the street and 3 guys will turn and they'll come at you and you'll have no idea what's going on or why. But in their mind, they already got the alert. Police on the lookout. Be on the lookout for a guy wearing a maroon shirt with a black baseball cap. Everyone instantly knows and they turn and they point at you and you're like...
Everyone's Mr. Smith or Agent Smith.
Yep.
It's like, it's not like they all look like Agent Smith. They're all like the woman in red or whatever, but everybody's plugged in. And as soon as the update comes out, everybody's aware. And you know that actually that's similar to what happens with the blockchain, right? As soon as a new block gets added to the blockchain, then it gets distributed through the blockchain. They all have the same. Every node on the blockchain or every computer on the blockchain has the whole blockchain. They've got all the information. So it's once it spreads through a system, that's it. It's there.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.